I want to talk about progressive overload within your programming. I get many questions about, plateaus and things of that nature with your programming and how to maneuver different programs to minimize plateaus and continue to see adaptation. So, progressive overload is key, and you can implement this in multiple ways. There's not just one way. There's multiple ways to manipulate the stimulus to change the programming. So, one thing you want to look at with progressive overload is obviously increasing resistance within the movement, whatever movement you're doing, by 2.5 to 5% from a week to week standpoint, if you can tolerate it and if your technique is good. So think of it that way. Example would be, if you did a deadlift of 200 pounds and you did 8 reps of that. Now let's go the next week, you go 205 or 210 for the 8 reps, making sure that your technique and form are appropriate. So again, increasing 2.5 to 5% from week to week within that programming. Maybe you do a 4 week cycle. Maybe you do a 6 week cycle. 6 week cycle, you probably want to have a progression of repetitions and or sets. So again, you want to look at it from that standpoint, as if you're going into that 4 week, 6 week cycle, you want to have a manipulation with progressive overload within rep range, set range. Another area is increase sets, which I just talked about, which is fairly easy to do. And this is another way that I manipulate the programming for my clients. Is example, you're doing 3 sets of 8. You do that for the first 2 weeks, and maybe you manipulate down to 4 sets of 6 or 4 sets of 8. You're pushing up the volume, and you're manipulating again the progressive overload. Now you may have to obviously change your weight on the bar or weight that you're moving based upon changing your set. Okay. Another one would be exercise technique, and this is one that nobody loves to do, but movement patterns in a slow or tempo format. That's another way to manipulate your progressive overload. Making sure proper range of motion, and you go into some type of tempo or some type of eccentric, so slowing the way down, normal on the way up, or a tempo, full tempo, where it's controlled on the way down, eccentric and concentric with the pause. So again, you can manipulate that progressive overload within the programming just by changing the speed of movement. And the other one would be rest time. So I like to manipulate rest time with supersets and or not supersets and or a timed interval. So there's different ways to manipulate progressive overload with obviously rest intervals, and you can really push your conditioning level as well. And if you're in a fatigue state and you go back into that movement pattern, you still can complete the repetitions in a proper format, right range of motion, good technique with the same weight. When you go back to back to back with that movement pattern, what you're going to do is you're going to build in better muscle mass and better strength and better work capacity. Okay. And then vary exercise complexities. So what I'm saying there is the difficulty of the movement patterns. Example, bodyweight squat, goblet squat, and then barbell back squat. So that's a progression. So there's multiple ways to do a progressive overload, and you can use bands, chains, and or different implements to increase the intensity of the complexity of the exercise. Or when you add bands, what you're doing is you have a accommodated resistance that changes the stimulus totally, and it affects your strength curve. Again, another way to add progressive overload, and that's what I did a lot of, obviously within the programming of the clients I work with. Another one is obviously monitoring and tracking progress. That's important because you want to know what you did the week before, so you can look at the percentages and push those percentages up. So these are just all ways that you can manipulate your programming with progressive overload to continue to see the results you desire, whether that be muscle mass, hypertrophy, and or strength gains. So this is ways to keep your programming manipulating with progressive overload using different stimuluses.